So a couple of days ago, I was editing some pages of the gzstorm.com website, and I was thinking about all the previous games that I've made, and I actually went and counted that I've released 25 games publicly, and that's not even including games that I made that were never released to the public, and just unfinished projects that are very near completion, things like that. So I've kind of decided I'm going to do a retrospective on some of my games and just see how this goes. And I figured I'd start with the earliest game that I have on the website. If you go to the old games link on the gzstorm.com website, you'll see this list, and at the very bottom of it is the Infiltrator beta demo. Now, the Infiltrator beta demo isn't actually the first publicly released game that we have. It's actually Downtown and Crazy Town. Now, you can see up here it says Downtown and Crazy Town, but that's actually the remake of Downtown and Crazy Town. The original Downtown and Crazy Town, I don't even have anymore, and it's easily the worst game I've ever made. And it's really, it pretty much does all the amateurish stuff that you would expect from a beginning game maker. Now, the Infiltrator beta demo was actually pretty good for the time, and what I mean by that is, this was the second game I did in GameMaker, and at the time, the GameMaker version was 4.3. Now, GameMaker today is a very good program, but back in the 4.3 days, it was extremely slow. Just having enemies that could detect and pathfind was extremely difficult because both of those things required too much computing, essentially, for GameMaker at the time. So basically, Infiltrator beta demo is a top-down shooter, and the inspirations for the game were mostly GoldenEye. At the time, me and my brothers played GoldenEye like crazy, mostly the multiplayer, but we also played the single player a ton. And if you remember in GoldenEye, for those who played it, they had a cheats menu where if you did challenges, you'd unlock cheats. And we would always just put different cheats on, play missions over again, and just keep doing that and just messing around. Now, another inspiration for the game was Metal Gear Solid. Mostly Metal Gear Solid 1, but I think at the time there were videos of Metal Gear Solid 2, and I took some ideas, like the freeze from it, freezing enemies, and something else possibly, I can't remember. But those were the two big inspirations for the game. Now, the Infiltrator series in general has basically been plagued since day one. I've so many times tried to make a full version of Infiltrator, different versions of it, and since making games, I've made 2 Infiltrators, and this was like 9 years ago. Since then, I have not released an Infiltrator game. I have tons of tech demos, I have tons of everything. No game. So you can see here, you can download the game. Right now, anyone can download this. And here it is. Now, what I did is, I took a screen capture of the loading screen. Now, the reason why is because if I just double-clicked it, it would flash for half a second and you wouldn't see it. And you can see the loading screen here. And that's probably the third GZ Storm logo. And at the time, it was GZ Soft. There were 2 versions of the logo before this, and they were even worse than this. I think the original GZ Storm logo, which was GZ Soft, looked like 42 Soft. The G looked like a 4, and the Z looked like a 2. It looked like 42 Soft. And there was a Canadian flag in the background. I don't know why. Now, you can see there's a warning here that warns the player about violence. And I think the only reason I even added this is for some reason I thought this would make the game seem more legitimate. I don't know how I thought that, but I did. So here's the game itself. It's a great opener there. Actually, I make fun of the opener, but at the time, almost no GameMaker games were even doing openers. And then here's the title screen, which just looks like a mess. You can see in the background, there's these weird squiggly line things, and they're fading in and out. And at the time in GameMaker 4.3, there was no alpha blending. Well, no, there was alpha blending, but it wasn't hardware alpha blending. And essentially that meant this slowed down the game to hell, which is why I put it on the title screen, because nothing's happening on the title screen. But basically, those really small sprites would slow down the game to hell, especially on my computer I was using at the time. Now, there's a whole bunch of options here, and I'm just going to go through each of them. First here is customize music. Now, you can see the screen here just looks horrible. For some reason at the time, on the Game Maker forums, if you didn't have music in your game, people would always say, oh, I'll put a custom music player in the game. And so few games even had custom music players. People would just say, oh, put a custom music player in the game. And it didn't even make any sense because no one was doing it. And this is something that the player themselves could do. You could use Winamp, you could use Foobar, you could use any program to play the music yourself. So this is really pointless. And the whole interface I have here is terrible. I have these buttons here. It's a terrible implementation, basically. So even though I had it in the game, it's terrible implementation, and the person could do it themselves anyway. Just going to note quickly here that the resolution for this game is 560 by 400. It doesn't make any sense at all. I know at the time I had an 800 by 600 monitor, but I don't know how I got 560 by 400. I basically just think somehow I punched in those numbers and that's just what I ended up using. It really doesn't make any sense. So I also have here gamepad support. Now once again, in GameMaker 4.3, they had a different setup for the gamepad. And I actually tried playing this with a gamepad and it didn't work because I think the old GameMaker's setup didn't work. Basically, this is another horrible implementation, really horrible looking screen. There's just no point to even play with the gamepad. And I couldn't even do it anyway. So I just thought that it's amazing that I have all these screens with all of these flashy graphics going on, but all of these screens are just white with red text on it. It makes no sense. So if you look here, okay, controls. This is actually at least reasonable because it tells you the controls, because most games at the time, once again, GameMaker didn't tell you the controls. Or it's almost even just old games in general would not tell you the controls. So at least I told people, okay, this is what you got to do. Now I think it's funny that I have in the top corner here that I recommend you use the left hand for moving and the right hand for the functions. As if the player may get confused and swap their hands around. It doesn't make, once again, it doesn't make any sense. And the text on here is blue. I don't know why. The other screen's is red. This one's blue. Once again, I don't even, at the time, it was basically just get it done as quick as possible and just, that was pretty much it. I did not spend any time thinking about the interface other than making it that you can click the buttons and that everything worked functionality wise. I really probably spent no time at all on the interface. So looking at the credits here, you can see once again it makes no sense. Red text on a gradient background. And you can see here, artist, sprite creator, character design. That all could just fit under graphics, but for some reason I wanted to pad the credits to make this seem more legitimate, when I really could have just put one title for each person here. Just, I did the programming, my brother did the graphics, and my other brother, he did some testing on it. So let's go and actually play the game here. Now, just like GoldenEye, there's 3 difficulties. The easiest difficulty will have less missions, the enemies have less health, and you get more ammo. And it's the reverse for hard. You get less ammo, the enemies are harder, and you have more missions. So I'm going to go through each of these, starting with easy. And you can even see here that the interface is basically the exact same as GoldenEye, but far worse, where I explain the mission, background information, and then what you have to do. So it says here, all I have to do is download the file from the server. At the start here, the enemies won't actually attack you. These, the backstory to this is that you're delivering a package here, and that's it. But obviously, you're here to download the files and steal stuff. So when you go in here, Mr. Smith will say, thanks for the package, and you can actually leave, but there's no point to that because